Reading of, at 5:30, reading of the district's promise statement. We promise to provide a supportive environment where unique learning experiences empower all for their chosen life adventure. Are there any additional items for the agenda? If not, do we have a motion? That's Kevin. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Joni. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Recognition of visitors and open forum. We have some people in the audience. Welcome. Did anyone sign up to speak? I guess I don't know. Okay. Reports and presentations. Student representatives report.
So next week, FFA has state, they get to go up to the cities. Next Wednesday, National Honor Society has their inductions for new members. There's 16 new people, so there'll be a lot of involvement in that next year. The school year's almost over. We got a month and a half left. I graduate next month.
Yeah. Is that scary?
That's about it.
All right. Any questions for Zach? Okay. All right. Well, good luck to you in the next month and a half that we have left. And
Zach, have you heard anything about the scholarship you applied for through the school?
No, they
Not
said
yet.
end of April, so
yeah.
Okay.
we'll figure out soon, I guess.
Okay. All right. B, superintendent report.
I'll start with the legislative update. Stuff is starting to come forward. Like this report I got said the fireworks start this week with a much anticipated House Education Omnibus Bill. We expect the bill to be on the House floor on Thursday, but that is not certain at this point. They've not heard a schedule from the Senate yet on when that is going to be discussed, but the Senate has split the bill into a policy and a finance bill. So there's two different bills in the Senate. Whether they would be joined in conference committee is unknown at this point. And then the legislative leaders have indicated that the bills are to be off the floor and to the conference committees by April 28th. And then another deadline that's been heard, but we can't confirm it for sure, is that the bills should be out of conference committee by May 5th. So, and then there's been quite a bit of discussion about school discipline. So they've been getting some information from principals about school discipline, other things, and we've gotten quite a bit of stuff today actually about some different things that they want us to bargain with as far as with the teachers group is class size, student to teacher ratio, restrictions on withholding recess, and curriculum mandates. So one estimate is that the House bill has over 65 new mandates. So we'll see if that comes true or not. And then pension is another major topic and issue that's been coming up for many years, and the target pensions received were insufficient to move the needle on the retirement age question, but efforts continue to shift the funding in this area. The governor will give the State of the State address on Wednesday evening this week. So, two big things that's coming up, like I said earlier, is about regulation of student behavior. And then, so they're working on different things with that and figuring out what they can do. They've talked about no suspensions from kindergarten through third grade students, that you can't use recess as a punishment, that kids have to be able to go out for recess, or the only way you can use it is as a last resort. We'll get a big update tomorrow morning, is when we hear our next update. So there was no update last week due to the legislature taking time off for Easter break. So we'll see how it all plays out. Matt, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you're staying up on topic, on top of the,
The one thing, we were asked today to submit a survey as they try to help gather, for their lobbying efforts at MSBA and Masville, with the unemployment for the summer workers. So I filled out the spreadsheet according to their instructions, and depending on the assumptions they use, but that would be a cost to the district right now of about $130,000 is what it came out to be. And right now, despite at first promising that there would be funding, there is no funding. The state's intention, or at least the legislature, is saying that can come out of your formula increase. So if the formula increase is gonna put us up like 250,000, they've already found 130,000 of us, of ways for us to spend that. So that's kind of disappointing to hear, but I know the lobbying effort will continue, so hopefully a lot of people respond to that and we can put up a concrete argument.
Then moving on, strategic plan. We need to rewrite our strategic plan for next year. So wondering when we want to get started with that, because we're going to use MSBA to do that this year. And they will also come in and do a board evaluation at the same time. So that's something we'll be talking about in the near future, about when are we going to do this, how's it going to look as we work through. They create all of the surveys that go out to staff, out to families, administration. They create everything for us. They get all the information, go through all the information and give us, break it down all for us. So it's a great service to have.
Have you talked to them yet? Because sometimes they have a certain schedule too, where they would be able to fit us in at a certain time, and
I have not talked to them.
we might wanna
So-
find out what works for them, and if you want me to, I can call too.
We can talk about it as we go, about when we want to do it. Summer isn't a great time to do it because of all of the surveys that need to go home. So we either need to do it soon this spring or right away in the fall.
Yeah, they might not have any availability this spring, so we'll have to find out what they have available for us to work with us.
Right? Just some other things that have come up. Vaping is a problem within our building, and we're working on curbing that behavior by the students as much as we can. If you've noticed around the building, we have signs that say no smoking, no vaping, outside of all of our bathrooms and whatnot, but it was brought up today again in our admin meeting that we're still seeing issues with it.
And did you get my email on the hometown health grant?
I did get
Okay.
your email today,
Yep.
so.
Hey, Jeremy, on that,
Yep.
did you get a chance to, I believe you said Maple River has those
Maple River
things?
does, and I've reached out to him 3 times and not gotten a response back to him about what are they using, so. And how effective is it?
Mhm.
That's and how well is it working? We noticed that once we put the signs up outside the high school bathrooms, now we're getting reports that there's high school kids using the elementary bathrooms. So it's,
So they're following the signs.
yeah. So, we'll be
Question,
working on that, yes.
remind me, what is staff able to do about it? Are they able to confiscate the vapes?
Mhm.
Are they able to investigate what they have in their pockets?
They are, and we actually have a metal detector that we can wand the students with to see what they have. It becomes difficult in some situations, depending on where they put them and what we're going to pick up, because they have their hiding places for them,
Okay,
so.
Does Officer Johnson get involved in that?
Yes,
or
Officer Johnson's involved in that.
What is the penalty or disciplinary action?
We have, suspension is confiscating it, suspension. But as you know, with suspension, you can do community service within the school and different things to make up that time. We've also started something new where we have a, recovering addict that comes in and counsels those students 2 or 3 times also to try and curb their behavior.
Nice.
So, vape detectors, as much as I would love to purchase them, they are expensive, so that's why we wanna do the research behind it to make sure it'd be worth the,
And definitely
Effort.
look into that hometown health grant, because I'm pretty sure that was one of the things that they would, pay for, is vape detectors.
Then we went out, moving on to technology-wise, we've started all of our testing, spring testing, MCAs, ACTs, and whatnot. But with that being said, we have Wi-Fi hotspots all around our building. We did go out to bid for those and do E-rate. However, we did not accept the proposal, because what we want is to have these companies come in and do a test for us during the middle of the school day, tell us what's gonna be the best wireless connection for us, and give us a bid that way, rather than us saying, we're already using Aruba, we wanna continue to use Aruba, when we don't know that Aruba is what is best for us. So therefore, we'll go out do this again, but we're gonna bring vendors in and do a full analysis of the situation before we would accept the E-rate for it. For those that don't know, E-rate, it's federal funding for it, and they'll pay 86% of the bill, so we only have to cover about 14% of it. In special education, we have some work skills competition coming up, so our students are gonna go compete. It's at South Central Service Cooperative against other students in different categories that they've been working on, whether it's life skills and different things, so that's exciting to hear. Also with special education, there's been some stuff that's come up about having highly qualified paraprofessionals. So a number of years ago, this came up also, and all of our paras at that time took a test called the Parapro to be highly qualified. So they either had to take the Parapro and basic skills in reading, math, and writing. They had to have 2 years of college or a 4-year degree. So now that's coming back up, and the Parapro is saying our test expired after 10 years, so you have to retake it. So we are getting a little bit of pushback. I've been working with Heather Harms, our special education director, about if they've already taken it and passed it, why does it expire if a 2-year degree doesn't expire, and different things. So we're getting some clarification behind that from the state and federal government, so. Facilities, our chiller is gonna be started up, so that was delivered and installed in December. So, and they can't start the chiller up when it's cold. However, they are gonna start the chiller on April 20th. So Thursday of this week, they'll be starting the chiller up. So when it does turn warm again, we will have the building dehumidified, and then they'll be here on April 27th to do the chilled side of the gym unit. So by the end of the month, the whole building should have the dehumidification.
Jeremy, question on that.
Yep.
So this year, because it's new, they have to be here when we start it up?
They have to be here to do the initial startup.
But in the future,
In the future, we can
we
start it
can
whenever.
do it ourselves?
It's just the initial startup they have to be here for.
Okay, and then once we do start that up, and I'm going off memory here, but once we do start that up, can we shut it back off if we get a cold snap where you need the heat on again? Because I know a long time back, when they were talking, this was before this system, I believe, that once you started it up, the heating was done for that year until you turned the heat on. But I think that might have been the prior system, that's why I'm asking.
Yes, you're correct. That is the prior system, because we did have boilers shut off last week,
Mhm.
and then they started boilers up last night. So it's 56 degrees in the building.
Yeah.
So they came in and started boilers up so it would be comfortable for the students and staff
So
today.
we have that
So we have the
flexibility.
ability to shut off and start up
Okay,
mechanics as we need to. Working with Casey, she's our Director of Teaching and Learning. She's doing a lot of work with curriculum right now, getting ready for next year. They're gonna be doing a lot of summer curriculum writing for elementary science, elementary special education and math, and 8th grade science. We also have some teachers that are due to be recertification of our CTE programs. So she's working with those teachers to get them recertified in their CTE programs. And then looking at switching from working with Riverland as our College in the Schools program to South Central. Riverland's been difficult to work with the past couple of years, so looking at making that change to work with South Central to create a new partnership with them to hopefully make it easier on the teachers and the students that are taking those classes. Human resources wise, contract negotiations will be starting soon. We can work on language whenever, but dollars are gonna be difficult to work on until legislation figures all of their stuff out and gives us the information on so we know what the increase is, what the mandates are going to be. However, Matt will be talking about budget assumptions a little bit later in tonight's meeting. Insurance, we did have to go out for HIDA bids for our insurance. We talked last meeting about it. It is gonna be an average increase of about 5.3%, between all four plans that we have. We'll be switching from Medicare, or Medicaid, sorry. Medica, there we go. Medica, that we have through the co-op now, to United Healthcare. Medica and the co-op wouldn't come below 20% of an increase. However, United Healthcare came to us at 5.3%, and then they have some guarantees on dollars, what it could cost in the future depending on our use of the programs. Community ed, working on summer programming, working on aligning the ESY and the preschool summer, so the extended school year and preschool summer alignment. So we will be running preschool summer school again this year for those kids that have not been in kindergarten yet. There is funding available for that program to continue. Elementary and high school, like I mentioned earlier, testing started for MCAs and fast testing that we do. Both principals are busy working on getting staff hired for next year. So we have hired a SLP, we've hired an art teacher. So interviews for science are gonna be this week. Phy-Ed, for our additional Phy-Ed position, that's gonna be, that job was offered. We're waiting to hear back from the candidate it was offered to. And then we just have some other positions that are open that we'll be interviewing over the next couple weeks. Moving on, spring activities are up and running like we talked about previously. One thing that Paul's been working on is a sports performance and sports medicine for our students. Working on having a trainer here for all home events, and then having that trainer here a couple afternoons a week to help our students that are hurt or might need some rehab. He was working with Mail through Mail to get that accomplished. However, Mail has come back and said they can't fulfill our request because of the lack of athletic trainers. So he's now gonna reach out to OFC to see if they're any help for us. And then one other thing is they did a trial with Volt Athletics. And what that is that's a strength and fitness program. So a couple of I think it was track team, baseball team, maybe the softball team also, I can't remember for sure, did a 2-week trial of their strength fit program to use to see how they would like it. So he's collecting all of that data to see if that's a program we want to use in the future. All of the kids have their own login. It gives them their program online, shows them how to do the proper lifts and stretches and everything for their activity that they're in at the time.
What do they charge for that?
I don't remember off the top of my head. It's not, if I remember right, it's not cheap, but I think it was, if I'm guessing, I thought he said it was about $6,000 a year, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to
Is
check
that
with him.
based on
Participation.
100 kids, 50 kids?
It'd be based on the number of student athletes we've had. So I don't know what it breaks down to.
So if they don't use it, then could be paying a lot of money for a few kids to use it.
Correct. So that would be something they'd have to figure out. With that being said, though, I know track has a requirement that they have to be in the weight room 2 days a week lifting. So they have to be in to do that. As far as the business side, and Matt will talk more about this in a little bit, food service update, bid opening will be tomorrow. And then we'll have a new mail service starting the end of May. We have, the current service we have right now is no longer gonna be providing that service. So therefore, we'll have a new machine in the office to run everything, and our custodians will be taking mail up to the post office when they go to pick up our mail already, so. It shouldn't be any additional work for them, just learning how to run the machine will be interesting. Couple other things. Adam Wattenberger is our school attorney that we use for consulting for Kennedy Graven. He has just accepted a job as the deputy legal counsel for the Rosemont Apple Valley Egan School District. So, we'll be switching to a different lawyer in their firm. One he recommends, his name is Alex Ivan. I've met and talked with Alex a number of times. His expertise is special education law, but he also does a great job with consulting for general education information. So we'll stay with Kennedy Graven because that's what the board has designated as our law firm, but we'll be switching from Adam to Alex. We're gonna have some changes in our graduation standards, specifically for art. The biggest change will be is that our CTE classes can no longer be used as an art credit for graduation, because those teachers have to be certified in art and have to be teaching those specific standards in order for it to be an art credit. So students are gonna have to take an art class, band or choir class to fulfill that 1 credit of art towards graduation. So we'll be making that change in the near future. So the students so we have time to make sure that this year's juniors have it in their schedule for next year if they have not fulfilled that art credit yet. So, and we'll work our way down. The other thing I wanted to talk about was with elementary art. If we look at the requirements by the state, right now we are out of compliance with elementary art. It says we have to offer 3 of the 5 areas and then require 2 of the 5 areas. Right now we're offering 1 of the areas, and that's our music class. So something we'll be talking about in the budget assumptions. One thing is the possibility of an elementary art teacher to be in compliance with the state. Okay, I just covered a lot of stuff.
Did you ever find out about the, evaluations for athletics and activities for fall and
Yes.
winter?
He does Paul does a student, summary. He does not do a parent one,
Okay.
so.
Is he looking at doing that at
To
all?
be honest, no.
Okay. I was
He
just
doesn't.
curious.
He wants to know from the athletes, about how they feel the coaches are doing. And I can have him come in and talk about it. But as far as parents, there gets to be a lot of opinions in there that he doesn't, he wants the facts from the kids, not the opinions of the parents, so.
I was trying to think if there was anything else we,
You asked
about last
about
time.
our math interventionist.
yep.
So,
Yes.
I did ask Mr. Lidkey to give me a rundown of what his, days look like and how the position has evolved over the year with it being a new position. So I'm not gonna read this to you, you guys can read it. But I do want you to look at the back, sheet on it. And what that is showing is the difference from first quarter last year to first quarter this year, and the gains that the students have made with the work that he has been doing. Now, you'll look at fourth quarter, and that's a negative number. That's because none of the grades have been put in there. So, these are, some of the this is a designated group of students he's working with. Not all of them, but this is a group of, I think, sophomore students that he's working with.
What do the numbers represent?
The numbers represent a gain.
Like-
So first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, you can see the net gain is, in first quarter, the overall is 238.01, but per student, it was a 21.64% gain.
These are percentages
And
of
just-
how they're,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
I was gonna say, not knowing much about it, like, what are they gaining? I don't have kids in high school or probably part of this.
How they've done, how they were doing, how they did previously to where they are right now.
Just like based off testing?
Yes.
So this is like their score,
Mhm.
is
This
what you're
is
saying?
Their grade, but not really how they're meeting standards.
Right,
So we wouldn't really know that until there's actual standardized testing.
right.
So
But
by
it is-
21 would be like from an F to a C maybe or something like that?
Yes. So quarter one, if you look at the first one, or look at the second one, from a 4.6% up to a 56%. So,
And are each of these scores like a student?
yes,
Okay, gotcha.
I just covered it up on this side because it had student names on it,
Oh,
and I wanted to keep those private.
And are most of grades like just summative assessments, not really formative in
Right,
most
these are
classes?
summative.
Okay. Sounds good.
But the grades from quarter one are from 2021, just coming out of the pandemic and all that
Mhm.
stuff, so I mean.
Last year compared to this year.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, some of these look really great, but if they would have been in school the year, they might not have been this high. If we would have had normal class for the last 2 years before this one.
Prior to this,
Yeah.
correct.
possibly. Some students might learn better
Mm-hmm.
remote too. You know, it's tough to say.
Right.
But- Just say.
Some kids might. My own does not. He'll tell you that. Another thing is, Waseca County's doing a, green out day, they're calling it. And it's gonna be on May 11th. It's Wear Green on May 11th for mental health awareness. So this will be going out on Peach Jar for all families. We'll encourage it here at the school. On April 27th, we have a suicide survivor, I think is how you'd say that, coming in to speak to our 5th through 12th grade students. She was a 16-year-old who tried to take her own life. Fortunately, was not successful and is now speaking about mental health and what they can do. So she'll be here that day on April 27th to talk with our students. We've invited community members in also if they want to come in during that time and listen to her speak.
I've seen her presentation. It's
Yeah.
How old is she now?
20s, early 20s.
Yeah, she's in her early 20s. She was
Yeah.
16 when she tried to commit suicide. She's also been in, she spoke to the Mankato School District a short time ago also.
So and I saw that come out, so what are we doing with the, if any, parents want their students not to attend this, what do we have set up for them? Because I know you can opt out.
Right, yep, you can opt out. So we'll have just an area that they can go to and we'll use it as a study hall or however we feel most fit for those students.
Okay.
So, we've also, if parents want to come in to see it, they can come in to see it. That's totally up to them. If somebody wants to come in to, just a community member wants to come in, they can do that also. There'll be a panel at the end of it of staff members to ask questions to and whatnot, so students can see which staff members are comfortable and they can go to during the day if they have questions and whatnot also.
This being held in the big gym then? I'm
It'll be
taking?
held in the big gym.
Okay.
What level is, sorry?
Fifth through 12th
Fifth through
grade.
12th, okay.
Yep.
Let me ask one more question about the math.
Yes.
So, right, for high school, Q1 and Q2 put together make a semester grade.
Correct.
So just looking at these, so student number one, quarter one, 40.29, quarter two, 55.29. Just comparing first quarter to second, it'd still be the same class, right?
Yes.
So next student, 56 to a 46, so they got worse. Q2 versus Q1, right? Student 3 didn't, basically identical. Student 4 went down, student 5 went down. Am I reading that correctly? And I'm now comparing quarter one
Quarter one with
to
quarter
quarter two of the same year, rather than comparing a year ago to. So
Yes, I see what you're.
what
you're
is
reading.
that telling us as far as some of that goes? Just quarter one to quarter two?
You can even
I
look
would
at quarter three too.
I would say I don't know if it's
Well,
the
could-
best measurement because we really don't know what standards are
Right,
being
what
tested.
standards are being
So it
tested at
could be
that
things
point.
that they struggle more with during the quarter, depending on what standards they're working on. I don't know. It's kind
Right,
of hard.
so this doesn't provide
It
a lot of
really,
value?
it's tough to see
Correct.
if they are making strides, necessarily without a standardized test, which,
Mhm.
Right,
Which they're
standardized
doing right
test.
now.
yes, which, I mean, and some of them, there's nothing held over them, so
Mhm.
yep. Right, so
it's
we,
hard to count.
I can ask to get better clarification on the specifics behind it also.
well, again,
Like
not,
if we can, if somehow, if there's a way to measure, are they meeting the standards now?
Mhm.
If they weren't, I mean, that's like probably really tough to go back now and see, but I'm sure they were measuring that in some way,
Mhm.
maybe.
we know that our kids need help in math.
Yes.
And, not just necessarily these students, but again, the standardized tests have shown that our kids are not doing real well in math. So just looking for, again, you can't manage what you can't measure. So if our measurements really aren't helping us or telling us anything, then some feel-good gains of COVID versus today, we need better measurement. So I'm all for an interventionist, and I think it's absolutely imperative. But maybe we're not anywhere, maybe we need 3 math interventionists. I mean, we need to help our kids get better in reading and math. So I'm asking for a better way to measure whether this way is having an impact. And I don't have a good answer on how to measure that yet. I just know we need good measurement. Standardized tests, yep. And you run into the whole issue, right? Again, kid graduated last year. His, tests would not have shown any value because he didn't take it seriously.
And I think that's what you're talking about, is you have nothing to.
You really don't have,
You
I mean,
don't.
unless, Mr. Leakey's kind of keeping track of certain standards where they're, I mean, it's amazing, it's great that, I think it's great that there's an interventionist and somebody here to work with the kids. Because one, it's somebody one-on-one to help, and sometimes that's all a kid needs. It's just that extra adult sitting next to him, but.
Right.
No, very good questions.
Yeah.
I'll get more clarification on it also.
Yeah.
Well, and, I haven't really had much of a chance to look at this, but just reading the first paragraph, it's working on those that failed from the previous year, but
Right.
I want to make sure we're catching people that are failing currently in their class and figure out, stop it before they fail. So, just so we have some way to identify that partway through and say, okay, what's going on? Let's pull those kids out and work with them before they fail. And not just work with them after they fail.
And I would argue we don't need to just be working with kids that are failing either. Again, my kid would have gotten B+ or an A- in math and not been able to pass college math. Has had to take remedial math.
Yeah.
But again, that was COVID. Everybody got good grades during COVID. Didn't mean that they knew anything, is my opinion, knowing how that group of kids, about 15, 20 of them were scoring in their math. The grades meant nothing. They didn't actually know how to do it. So, again, I appreciate that Mr. Earler is willing to get clarification from Mr. Lidkey. It's gonna be a much broader issue than simply, help me clarify how you're gauging this. It's a much bigger issue than that. I would love to hear from Mr. Lidkey, what are his recommendations on how we move the math program forward here at JWP? Not just how we get better grades, because better grades do not necessarily mean, that they actually know how to utilize it.
True.
Well, according to reading this, he does pull them through the semester, so, and that's going by Ms. Brown, Mr. Kubal, and the parents, and then they go through current math grades, so they are pulling.
I know that hasn't happened in some cases, so that's why I want to make sure it is happening.
I'm just gonna say that goes into a deeper issue. We have 4 math teachers, they're only required 3 classes to graduate, and why are we having this many students fall behind? Why don't the regular 4 math teachers be able to pull the students out and help them, with time? They're the first line, besides the parents. I mean, I look at this and I'm going, we're throwing a Band-Aid on a big hole. Interventionist is good if you have a lot of students, but if we're only doing 15 students, we're spending a lot of money on one person and I don't know if it's 15, 20 students or whatever it is, to where we have 4 actual math teachers. Why aren't they keeping up with kids that are struggling and helping them at the time, to where we don't even need a math interventionist? There's plenty of schools out there that probably have some. There's plenty of schools that don't have any. So to me, there's a deeper thing that we need to look at.
Well, I think ultimately the goal would not to have an interventionist in the end, that we get everybody to where they're supposed to be, and then moving forward, it is up to the
Again, I have no
teachers.
problem having an interventionist for
Yeah.
the bell-shaped curve to take off the bottom, whatever percent. But to Tim's point, we gotta move that whole bell-shaped curve long ways to the right before we're being effective, as far as both math and reading.
I'm not sure, do all the teachers, math teachers kind of do the flipped? I know Mr. Skinner's done the flipped classroom, does Mr. Kubal, do all of them do the flipped?
I think they went away from that, didn't
They've
they?
went away
But
from
they have
it
those,
for
but-
the most part. It's available if it's
Mhm.
needed,
Mhm.
but for the most part.
They kind of went off.
That's one thing that Casey's really been working on is how do we get this aligned the way it should be, because it's not.
Mhm.
And we go back, whether it goes back to personalized learning and we created all these videos and flipped everything, or COVID or whatever, it's, and I think you're right. We need to have those recommendation or remediations on how do we improve not only our math department, but we could look at that in every department to make improvements. So,
What are we doing with our standardized testing to make sure kids are taking that seriously?
encouraging as much as we can, but they have they have everything set so limited on what we can and can't do or say for them.
And those are the ones you can opt out of too, the students can actually opt out of, and there's a bunch of school districts that's happening to where, and it's hurting the school districts.
It
Because the
does.
state holds it against them then, because the kids are opting out, but the state's allowing them to opt out too.
Right, you can
Parents
opt
don't
out as a
do that?
parent, you can opt your child out of a standardized test, but it comes as a, does not meet for the school.
Mhm.
Oh,
So it hurts the school to have the
Interesting.
parents opt
And maybe
them out.
parents don't understand that. Maybe there's a way
Yeah, that's
to
interesting.
teach parents about how it hurts the school.
I don't think our school we have.
I don't think we have anybody that
But
opt out.
there's some of the city schools, I can't remember which one it was, 56% of the class opted out.
Wow.
Because they go, why should we take it? It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't do anything for me personally as a student. And so they said, now we don't have to go take it, and we can screw around for this hour that they're taking it.
Mhm.
It's a domino.
Right, so
Yeah.
we don't have that issue, but we do
Yeah.
have a bit of, again, it doesn't really matter, A.
I'm just wondering how we can really gauge where these kids are at and what the help is needed if
Mhm.
grades are.
Zach, do you have any ideas on how to motivate kids to take these tests?
I don't, but there's definitely an unmotivation with a lot of the kids. I know I've sat there and 10 of them will finish in the first 10 minutes of the test and just sit there then.
And that's it too. They just select an answer.
Are they
all the way
allowed,
through.
are they
And you-
allowed to then go on their phones and stuff?
No,
They're not?
I think they just have to sit there.
they have to
usually.
sit there. And now they've made a rule that, like, we set everything up to take 2 days, so you stop at this section. But if they don't stop and they complete their test in 1 day, on day 2, when they're supposed to test, they can't even be in that same room. So we have to find some place for them to go on day 2 when they finish that test.
One of the potential checks, that I was looking at was ACT scores. Again, I know you're segmenting those that are taking the ACT, but just looking at how they did grade-wise versus their ACT math scores, the discrepancy there, substantial. So, again, I realize that's not across all kids, but if what might be your next higher ed learning kids aren't doing well in math, that's problematic. Because you know that anybody that's not taking ACT is likely maybe not even doing as well.
We do compare ACT scores, don't we?
Yeah, we do in some areas with some kids, but now you don't need an ACT score to get into a state college. It goes off GPA and it goes off your class rank, so,
But most kids are still taking the ACT, even if they're not needing them to go to college.
we have 34 tomorrow taking it,
Juniors?
juniors, out of a class of
55.
55.
So again,
Just over half of them.
which is quite a few.
Yeah.
I would have expected it would be less.
I thought we usually had more.
Yeah. I was
Well,
thinking
we
more
have
too.
we have to allow them and pay for the test here, but they don't have to take it here, it's
Mhm.
their choice. So, we can do some comparing.
So how do those kids do on their ACT math versus even correlating it to grades?
Right.
Sorry to squirrel on you there.
Nope, that's just fine,
It's all stuff that we need to talk about.
absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, budget information, enrollment update. Me.
Enrollment's down, it shows that it's down 2, but actually we had a new one start today, so it's actually only down 1. And a 7th grader start today.
Curious, like, if you have somebody start that late in the year, like, are there ever any issues with them moving on to next year, getting their information from where they previously were to make sure they're?
We get all the records from the school of where they are. So, what the other school is teaching in comparison to us, that's
Different
a different story. So, especially if they come from depending on what they're coming from. If they're coming from a level 2 or a level 4 or a level 3 situation, it may not be as focused on academics as it is behaviors, so they may not be there academic wise.
Or even a different state.
Different state, yeah.
And regardless of what happens with students' adds or minuses, Minnesota State High School is set for the next 2 years, regardless of how many
Yep.
kids come or go. Okay. That decision has been made.
Yep.
Okay.
Like it or not.
Yeah. Any other questions on the enrollment? Any questions on the historical cash balances? All right. We have any committee reports?
Well,
No? Okay. Approval of the consent agenda. Did you have something?
Should we pull Mike out of the personnel changes? Since he's just a volunteer coach.
Or she
He's
just
not
abstain?
paid.
Trying to remember.
Well, what did we do with you just last time, Katie? Was
It
you-
was already
Well, we
pulled
pulled,
out.
we
Oh,
already
you
pulled her out.
pulled.
I can
Jeremy and I pulled
abstain,
her
that's
out when
fine.
we
Yeah.
met, but,
But I think in the past, it's really not a conflict of interest. Because one, we have this person's not being paid, and two, the school board member on here has no authority over the person. That's where like,
Sadly.
I can actually, well, that's where like I can actually vote on the teacher's contracts, because I'm not the one that negotiated it and I don't have any direct control.
Well, you have to vote on the teacher's contract.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but the coach is one where she's in too, so that's the way it's
trying to
been.
remember. I don't have my paperwork in front of me.
If you're worried about it, pull it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not worried about it, I just wanna make sure that we're in compliance.
But if you're at all concerned, pull it.
Yeah, we probably should just do it and vote separately on that one then. Okay, all right, so we'll pull Mike Cahill from the personnel staff changes and do that one as, I don't know, 8, I guess, and then move old business to 9.
That's my name. Got that teaching that Monica's job.
All right, any clarifying questions or anything else we might wanna pull? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
That's Tim Burke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And that's Sherry Dashner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right, then 8, approve Mike Cahill as the, I'll pull it up here, assistant, or, volunteer track and field coach, effective March 18th,
So
2023.
moved.
Kevin Bourne, do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Sherry Dashner. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Those opposed say nay. And I'm assuming one abstention, so motion carries 6-0-1. All right, so then 9 would be old business. Third readings and final approval of new policies. So policy 534. Any questions?
The one thing I want to bring up with this, is that, in section 3, the lower negative account balances, in part B, notifications are sent by electronic mail. We don't do phone calls home, so.
At what point did it just, I guess a general question, at what point do like we go like collection with it?
Matt?
We, in my time here, we've never gone to collections. I mean, the state really limits what you can do. Collections is an option, but we haven't explored that at this time. I think at the end of this year, we'll have to have some talks, because especially as we roll into where the state's gonna make the first meal free, I think some people are gonna have an assumption that everything's free, so we gotta watch it with balances and everybody on a la carte or second entrees and try to rein that in. We had our own hiccups this year with like notifications got glitched with Taher, so once we got those going, I think that's helped. Yeah, I think there's still a substantial balance out there.
With that said, are we going to send out multiple notifications before next year starts so that parents are well aware that the first meal, breakfast or lunch is free, but anything a la carte or additional, they will be responsible for, so we don't have people going, well, I didn't see that email, or
You know,
Well-
once we get the
final determination.
final
stuff,
determination and final information, because reading through one of the things, and Matt's asked MDE about it, says that if you take a full second meal, it's charged at the adult price, which is $5. So it's, we want a clarification on that.
Yeah, so you have, if a student goes up and takes an entire second meal, like all the vegetables, everything, milk, then yeah, $5, so I did get clarification on that. If it's just the second entree, or like, they go get a second cheeseburger, slice of pizza, that'll still be something that we can set the price at. Now, the one thing they cautioned on is the way that the federal mandates are written is that you can't subsidize a la carte with paid lunches. So basically what they're saying is you need to charge enough for the second entree to make it pay for itself, which, depending on what you're serving for lunch that day, the $1's fine. Sometimes maybe it's not, so we'll have to work with Taher to make sure that we have that price set, to kind of capture the average. Because when MDE responded to me, they also pointed out we were gonna have a review next year. So that's one thing they'll be looking at, is how we're pricing that. So, yeah.
So your second entree today is 50 cents, tomorrow's gonna be $2.
Well, that's what I kind of asked. That was in a webcast today. I was like, so are we supposed to be pricing this dynamically as it, as it goes? And I was like, I don't think so. That would be a nightmare. But
Yeah, as a parent, how would you, hey, you can go have a second one today, but
Yeah.
tomorrow, no.
yeah, mac and cheese, you're okay.
Yeah.
Not the
tough
chicken
one.
breast, whatever. But so, but yeah, hopefully more information comes out on that. And we did communicate at the start of this year that I think we got out heavy that, hey, nothing's free, COVID's over, and we still had people that were surprised they were getting charged. So we can send out as much as we want to get people to actually notice it. Remains to be a mystery.
So have phone calls been made to some of those then? That, or are we just sending notices all of
They
them?
get notices.
Right, it should be automated through Infinite Campus now.
Yep.
Well, I just mean those.
But
that-
if somebody's like at $1,000,
Yeah.
is there a phone call that's
I
made?
mean, has somebody actually reached
I
out to
don't
them?
believe we have anything going formally
That all goes
way.
on, that's Taher that does all of that.
Didn't
Right.
Andrea at one point, a couple years ago, make some calls?
Andrea did for
Community
the,
ed.
that was
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
ed.
Yeah.
And community ed, we did use collections,
Yep.
so we at least did that, but you know, then you're talking 50 cents on the dollar and, or worse. But, you know, it was successful, and it's nice to get those big balances off your books too, even if we don't collect all the money, just to be done with the administrating and the headaches there, so.
So we don't have a, per se, set dollar amount that if a family goes, I'm just gonna use a dollar amount, $100 in debt, that we are actually making a personal call and saying, here, or sending a certified letter or something, just because emails, everybody can say, oh, I never received it, I never received it. But I mean, should we, is, I guess more is the question, if we're not doing it, should we set a dollar amount to say, in lieu of letting it get up to $300, $400, $500, do we set it at a lower amount and spend a little time up front? I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
Right.
You said Taher does that? Do
Mhm.
they actually, they, they make the phone calls or you're?
No, Taher does the emails and everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
They set up,
They
do.
were supposed to have it set up all year. I finally figured out halfway through the year that it wasn't happening. So then at that point, it was kind of, I took a lot of responsibility on our side, because if you just get notified, hey, you owe the school $300 out of the blue, you know, it's,
yeah.
not everyone's ready to cut that check right away. So this year especially, we're gonna have some leeway if people are getting blindsided, and then, it adds up quick if you think your kid's only getting, an entree, but they're getting the a la carte stuff or whatever. So we've had some discussions too on how to better manage that, so parents aren't getting as blindsided,
And you
even
can
though-
shut those kids off, like if you're
well,
just getting
so-
all the extra drinks and everything else.
We figured that out the other day. Is there's an option in Infinite Campus to say no a la carte for this student, but all it does at the register is pop up a little box that says, "Hey, this student has a la carte turned off," but there's an override button that those people can hit, and I guess the cashiers have done that in the past, is overrid it because the kid's standing there with the food, so we kind of had that discussion, like, how do we better manage that? That cashier, if they're running 2 lines, is a lot to, you don't have 5 minutes to check everyone out and make sure all these things are checked off either, so
And it's already after they got the food, so
Right.
now you're
So there's-
wasting the food.
there's some issues there. Now, of course, it's a lot easier to say, no, go put the pop or the juice or whatever that thing is back, but, the elementary school side, so.
Do we get notification from Taher if they're supposed to be sending out these emails, like weekly or bi-weekly, sending to us, here's the list of who we sent it out, so that we know they're actually doing what they're getting paid to do?
I think it's system generated
Right,
based on the
yeah.
Notifications.
I think right now, anyone with a negative balance is getting notified.
But I mean, how do we know that? Because, like you said, the beginning of this
Right.
year, it wasn't working, and we didn't realize it until all of a sudden,
Right.
what, December?
Mhm.
Or so, so that's what I'm wondering, how do we know for sure that it's working properly if Taher's taking
Sure.
care of it? They're not the ones that are losing
Right.
out on the dollars.
Right. Well, at the first time, when it first was coming back online, I sent out questions to staff. I just said, "Hey, is anyone with students in the building getting these notifications?" A lot of people were saying no at first, and then when it came back on, I got a lot of responses that said yes. And actually, for scientific purposes, I have a negative balance right now that I let run
I was just
just a
gonna
little
say
bit,
that.
just so I can, make sure, because every Sunday, right around
Testing
6
it.
o'clock, I get it.
Yeah.
It's only $20 or something, yeah.
Test
It's
it.
not a big thing, but.
Till we charge you the
Right,
the interest
well, yeah,
compounded
there you go,
hourly.
the interest. so-
Collections with them.
Yeah, exactly.
So would Taher
Right.
do the phone calls or is that something that would fall on us?
I guess those are the questions I always have when it comes to Taher. that I don't get a lot of answers on. Cause like same thing, there's been some mistakes on meal charges and at first I'm like, well, Taher should be fixing this, but then I don't trust them, so I do it myself. Cause I just want it done right, but, I think the spirit of the agreement is they should be administrating all that stuff. But,
I guess we'd almost have to see if they have something in their contract.
right, yeah.
I mean, we're
So-
getting new stuff tomorrow, right? The bids.
We're hoping.
Yeah.
So we had one other vendor show up to our optional meeting, and we kind of did a little tour of the kitchen, whatever. But he has since informed me that they could not make the numbers work, and they will not be submitting a bid. So we just have to hope someone else out there can submit something. I haven't got any indication from any other company since. When I first sent out the letters, I had a few people ask for the RFP, but since then, I've had no communications. And I don't really know if, with the spirit of fairness, if I'm supposed to be like hounding these people or just letting it ride out, so I haven't been following up, but
And anything further with joining forces with other school districts?
They're willing to talk about it, but they're not willing to do it. So they'll talk about how we could do it, but when it comes down to joining with them, because they have union people involved and stuff, they don't wanna do it.
So there's no point in talking about it then, right?
So Matt, do you envision us hiring our own employees?
well, if we do that, if Tower's the only bidder and we don't wanna deal with it or we reject it, then I believe the process from there is we have to go, hire staff to make sure we can run the thing, but then also we have to go out to like our milk vendor, our bread vendor. I think there's one more, but I can't think of it at the top of my head. We have to like competitively bid that, and there's a lot of administrative stuff that gets set up that way. I think we'd have to have a lot of conversations with the state just to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, because there's, when we're under the vended contract or the contractor, we have our own requirements. There's other requirements for having it in-house, so of course, with not having summer service, we wouldn't have to get that all lined up till September, but
It'd take a little bit of time and
Yeah.
effort.
and then, of course, the revolving door potentially of food service staff and all the fun of, there's a reason why people contract
Mm-hmm.
this stuff, so, but not saying it's impossible. It's just, there'll be some growing pains on that end, I'm sure.
How recently did we do it that way?
I believe we picked up food service company in 2014,
Okay,
so,
so we've done it as a food service contract since 14.
right.
Okay,
And of course, I don't know how much you're aware, but we had Sarah for the longest time as our in-house, who was our employee with us
Right.
before that. So really, dealing with Taher hasn't been basically since Sarah left, is when we've officially started dealing with Taher.
which is 1 year.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. What was it, like a March?
It
So,
was about, just over a year.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Feels a lot longer.
Bet it does.
Yeah.
In the policy, it does say that negative balances more than $10 not paid prior to the end of the school year will be turned over to the superintendent or superintendent's designee for collections.
So we can make the calls if we
Mhm.
want, okay.
Right.
Thinking we might wanna, I like your idea of doing it at a lower amount, so we catch these people before it gets too bad, because then it gets too high,
It
and
just
it's
gets
harder to
tougher.
pay. Yeah,
Right, well, yeah. I
Like-
can tell, unless something's changes, we have a few balances that probably would shock you, but,
well, and part of that is because the notifications didn't go out, right?
Right,
So we're,
yeah.
yeah,
Are these people encouraged to sign up for free and reduced lunch? Okay.
We always make sure that's included in whatever communications we have.
do they have a payment plan that
Um,
they're, like, every so often paying a certain amount, even if they can't pay the full balance right away?
Right, I'm not sure if anything got formally set up, but when these notifications went out, I did try to communicate, I forget what exactly I typed up, but something along the lines of, if you do have, you know, a balance larger than you're able to afford at this time, please contact the district office at least. But I'm not sure how many of those calls we got.
Yeah, we might need to make calls and do that then. Okay. Any other questions on policy 534? We're only on the first one. All right, if not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
It's
for
Tim.
Policy 534.
Tim Burke, do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Elke. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 708. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
It's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Burke. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 709. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
That's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Burke. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 721. Any questions or comments?
This one also, in Part E, procurement methods, Part 2, or Section number 2, procurements by small purchase procedures. It goes on that other properties that do not cost more than $150,000. The recommendation from MSBA is $250,000. And it periodically adjust for inflation. So, that was the only thing that was brought to my attention. So,
Any other questions?
So are you recommending that change?
I would recommend that change, yes. I can go either way with it. That would be my recommendation. However, I'm not completely set that 250 is where it needs to be. I'm okay with 152.
Can we approve it with that change, or does it have to come back then for another reading, because you're making a change to this? I can't remember how.
No, you can still make,
You can make
Because
the
I
change.
think you have the
and-
three times to make changes
Yeah.
before
Yep.
you approve it.
you can make changes up until it's approved.
Any concerns about the 250,000? Okay, if not, do we have a motion to approve policy 721?
I'll make a motion.
That's Tim Burke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Joni Olson. Any further discussion?
Is that with the change of 250?
Oh, sorry, yes, with the change of 250.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Do you have to re-second it? I don't know.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 722. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
One question.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
Is this the one that we had discussion on previously about?
No, that one was
Very good.
5 something.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion to approve policy 722?
So moved.
That's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Elke. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right, B, approval of existing policies with non-substantial changes. Policy 203.5. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve policy 203.5?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 203.5.
That's Tim Melky. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Burke. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 204. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve policy 204?
So moved.
That's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Berg. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Are we going slow enough for you, Wendy? I should ask that. You got them all? Okay. Policy 206. Any comments or questions on that one? If not, do we have a motion to approve policy 206?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 206.
That's Tim Melky. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Joni Olson. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 301. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve policy 301?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve policy 301.
That's Joni Olson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Burke. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Policy 303. Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve policy 303?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 303.
That's Tim Melky. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Sherry Dashner. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. New business. Approve the non-renewal of, is it Katerina or Katrina?
Katrina.
Katrina Reitziger as business teacher.
Um,
Discuss that.
Yeah, each year when a teacher doesn't have the appropriate license for teaching a subject area, we need to non-renew their, do a non-renewal, open the position, and see if we get qualified candidates. That's the situation for both this one and the next candidate. So the business teacher position's been reopened for applicants. They do have the opportunity to reapply if they choose to. But according to the state, we have to do a non-renewal.
I would make the motion to approve the non-renewal of Ms.
Reitziger.
Ritzikel.
There you go.
All right, that's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Melky. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Aren't we supposed to do a roll call? That's what it says in their letter.
The letter? What letter?
The letter that's
It's
in
a
here.
resolution.
A
if you
resolution
open
was
the link.
adopted by a majority roll call vote on to terminate your contract.
Oh, well, yep, then,
Sorry.
yeah, I didn't see it in the agenda, so. All right,
Bourne,
Yes.
Dashner,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Size.
yes. All right, motion carries 7-0. 9, approve the non-renewal of Jenna Shanerock as science teacher.
Same situation. We have an out-of-field placement currently for Jenna. Her teaching license is in math, and she's been teaching science for us. So the state says we have to do a non-renewal.
I make the motion to approve the non-renewal of Ms. Schoenrock as science teacher.
That's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Sherry Dashner. And Wendy?
Dashner,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Bourne,
Yes.
Size.
Yes. Motion carries 7-0. 9C, approve the fiscal year 2024 budget assumptions.
Sure.
Sure.
Here we go. I'll try to be fast. So this document's kind of been rolled over every year. We go through this just to kind of help framework the initial budget. I plan to have a rough draft of that budget for the finance committee on the 15th of May, and then I will go to the board, the full board in June. We have to approve that before June 30th, so the school district can function. So, just trying to get ducks in a row here. Right off the bat, when we have these bienniums that aren't settled, we do budget at a 0% increase, regardless of what we think might happen. So right now, I do have a revenue mocked up for fiscal year 24 already, but that is with 0 formula increase. So hopefully that 4% comes in. As far as pupil units, we are sitting at 670, which is always a little misleading. As far as students and seats, we'd be at 660, but this ECSC, which is our early childhood special ed, does enter in. We get funding for that, so we do want to budget for it. However, when we're talking about number of kids in the building, per se, on a given school day, we're really at 660. When we budgeted last year at this time, we were at 655, so we're about 15 students higher than we were. So once you have kind of this, what the formula is going to be and your student count, you can almost come up with about 85 to 90% of the revenue budget that way. So we also know our levy already, having set that back in December, so that is set to be at this 1.8 number, as well as special ed projections, so just over $1 million for revenue on that end. And then some of the other assumptions we make as far as sports and student registration and all the other odds and ends, we kind of take last year and maybe add a slight percentage or just set it kind of with the average there. Food service will be budgeted to increase with the free-for-all legislature, but we will work with our vendor at that time to set that budget up. Community ed, the one change there is we no longer levied for ECFE, so we will have a decrease in revenue for community ed overall. However, I don't think that program will suffer, as far as that. We've been putting money into fund balance the last couple of years. And then debt service, we just have to do the 105% of any bond payments that are due as the state requires. As far as expenditures, we also have some unknowns here that are quite substantial, with all the contracts except for Jeremy's being up for renegotiation. When we settled last year, we had about $300,000, which was the projected impact. So just with a kind of a growth there, I set this preliminary at $350,000, with just no knowledge really, just a kind of an educated guess at this point. As we get into it more, this number will change and become more accurate. Class size targets are listed next. I don't believe any of our grades are really bumping up against either side, high or low, but those are there in case anyone wants to call any of those out. As far as other kind of supplies or any of those smaller budgets, we normally use like a 2% increase unless we have a reason to change it. Like curriculum comes to mind, that one we work with Casey and try to get more of a firm number. Hopefully all those orders are kind of done in the May-June timeframe anyways for next school year. But as far as unknowns or just kind of smaller accounts, we kind of used last year plus some. We're still on our purchased due to our COVID dollars on technology, so we don't have any leasing going on currently, or at least any big leases with one-to-one devices. And then working with Mr. Dashner on getting some of our projects that we might do. Not all of these potentially would happen, but parking lot resurfacing is definitely a need. Wood chips for the playgrounds, it sounds like we've had some settling there, so we'll have to bring that back up for safety reasons. Track resurfacing was a question mark. We're kind of in a window where it could be done, but maybe doesn't need to be done, so we will definitely talk about that as we set up the budget. We had the reverberation project, we talked about a couple meetings ago that we were gonna use project dollars for. So we'll have that. And then some other things, there was some talks of reconfiguring this space as well as a plow truck, potential, so some projects there. Once again, food service, we'll have to work with our new vendor or existing vendor on having that set up. And then as well as community service, we've had some talks on what their salary and wages will do. And then finally, debt service. So in order to set the budget at what it needs to be at with that 105, it's 840,000 approximately here going on. One of the discussions we had, if the election that we're gonna hold in November is favorable, we will pay off the 14A bonds, and that would save us about $50,000 in interest, as well as take those debt service payments off of future levies. The 17 bond is callable in 2026, which if we were able to pay off that 1.2 at that time, which doesn't seem likely, but just for illustrative purposes, we would save about $180,000 in interest over the remaining life. And then the 2021 bond, I didn't even put on here as far as the call date, but those go out to 2024, so. And then finally, some staffing needs. Some of these are happening, some of these have just been, are talking about. But the social worker, we still have some ESSER funding for at least part of their salaries. In addition, hopefully the legislature comes through with more funding for the student support personnel. We've talked about the additional Phy-Ed teacher. One thing was brought up to have a designated para for a high school study hall. So if we need to incorporate that in, we can, as well as this is kind of a wish list item for Mr. Adams, but 7 additional paras for the elementary, 1 per grade level. The elementary art teacher we've discussed earlier to get us back in line. There was some talks of getting a behavioral interventionist into the ADSYS grant. Now, the ADSYS grant doesn't pay 100% of the salary, but it would cover a substantial portion of that. So we are still waiting to hear back from the state if we got approved for that.
We should hear back within the next couple weeks.
So, and then finally, with anticipation of some potential maternity leaves coming up, having a full-time, long-term sub was also discussed. So, all things we're trying to keep on our radar as we formulate this budget, as we go forward. Any questions?
With the enrollment,
Mm-hmm.
was that a, conservative number, even though you bumped it up 15 students?
It was when we did it, but now with the current trends, maybe Jeremy and I can relook at that. But I think when we did our actual projection, we were going to be at like 678, so we just brought it down to that. Or sorry, 668. So we brought it down to 660, just to be on the safe side. And when we do that projection, what we normally do is we look at the fall counts versus the end of the year and how that's kind of changed. And then, you know, obviously we'll talk to Trinity, see how many kids we have coming over. We'll talk to the staff that ran the kindergarten roundup, see, you know, what's going on with Bulldog Academy numbers versus kindergarten numbers. So, and then once we kind of shake that all out, like I said, I think we came up with something in the high 660s, but we brought it down to 660 to be on the safe side.
Because just looking at the enrollment
Right.
for this year, we've
Yeah.
been going down, so I just want to make sure that we're
Right.
estimating that, so we are at
Sure.
least above that, or I mean, below that low number.
Right. No, I think that's fair. I think we probably set these projections a while ago. But, so what we were basing it on, we had our September 20th of 2022 count was 678, and we had February 14th of 2023 was 670. So kind of looking at those 8 students and where they fell. And then actually looking at the enrollment projection we had from 2023 versus what was actually there. And we kind of looked in the mid-November range. So we used that to kind of suss out all the projections like we have. So, and like, yeah. I'm not, I guess we already kind of pared it down, but the, like I said, I think it came out like 668 and then we brought it to 660, but we can relook at that certainly before we set this number. If this is something we want to table.
Do we know how many students are actually coming over from Trinity from after this year? Or, I mean, we probably know how many students they have that could, but have we firmed up a number from them that are coming over?
No, we don't have a firm number yet. I think we projected low. So we go through their class list of who's had siblings that have come over and who hasn't, and where they currently live. So Wendy normally has a pretty good idea of that, and so does Nancy. So I do think this year, I think we projected this year's number being lower than in the past.
How many pairs do we currently have for elementary?
Well, this is what the wish is these would be general ed paras, not covered through special ed dollars to help out in the classrooms. But like Matt said, this is
Got it.
kind of that wish of if we could have, like, that's where the 7 paras fall in, full-time, long-term substitute. The elementary art teacher, well, when we're not in compliance, we need to do something with that. Social workers have been extremely valuable to us. I want to do whatever we can to keep them. And hopefully funding comes from the state. We have some ESSER dollars that are left. The additional Phi Ed teacher with changing the high school schedule.
The pair for study hall, what do we currently do?
We don't have many study halls. We don't have study halls at all, so kids end up down here in the media center, or they're in a classroom trying to study when a teacher is teaching a different subject.
Didn't we get away with study halls next year, though, on the
Kids with
schedule?
online classes and
Kid,
stuff.
yeah, we have to have a place for kids with online classes
Oh.
or PSEO classes
Oh,
that they
okay.
can go and be supervised to
Oh,
do
and
their
that's
work.
where you would have,
Yep,
okay.
But that could still be down here, cause you have a media center specialist that's in this area.
she's teaching a class.
But I mean, technically, those students could still be here, you have a supervisor here. You don't need to have them in their own classroom.
Technically, yes. Does it work? No.
They're getting distracted by the class, or?
Well, she's teaching
nobody's-
an elementary class, therefore, when they're over there working on their class, there's nobody supervising them, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
and-
We've had issues with the kids that are down there working, swearing and everything in front of the younger kids, and nobody there to monitor and deal with it at that time, so.
So Matt, just help me understand, are you looking for some type of vote on something, or? I mean, are we-
Yes, well, for this, I would like once again, with Laura's question being valid, but typically when you approve this document, that's when we say, okay, this is when we're locking in the student count for the budget.
Okay,
And as well as that, in the past, we've had grades that have been right at the class size target, so we've used this as a vehicle to say, yes, we're okay keeping 3 sections in second grade versus, 2, whatever have you.
Sure. So for instance, on the additional considerations, without knowing what those things cost, I don't know how we would
Right.
vote on whether,
Well, and especially those, I was gonna bring up, of course, any position, contract, whatever have you, is still gonna come to the board for consideration. So by voting on this, you're not saying, yes, we're gonna hire 7 pairs. I think more, the way that, like I said, it's more just locking in that student count and saying, yes, we agree, this is a good target to shoot for, and get the budget rolling that way. Some of the, I just trying to bring them up, and some of these are notes to myself too, so.
yeah, so as long as that would be more just advisory
Right.
than any indication that we're in favor of doing any
Right.
of those things, I
Right.
get that. I mean, I'm fine with locking in a
Right.
student count. You're being pretty conservative.
Mhm.
You said we're not bumping up against any of the class targets, so
Right.
doesn't seem as though there's anything controversial in it.
No,
It's
like
being
I said, it's just,
conservative as normal.
yeah, this, I mean, being your first year on the board, but this is something we've done. I guess I inherited this document as well, and we just kept it rolling, so if we need to reinvent the process, maybe it's time to do that with these, but I think just having everyone kind of sign off and say that, at least for the student count, so we can roll forward with it, so that way there's not questions later of, well, how'd you come up with that number? So, but yeah, like I said, just nothing in here is binding where, I'm gonna hold you to the flames later and be like, well, remember when you voted on this thing? So,
I'm not even thinking that so much as maybe
Yeah.
other groups could use it as, looking
Sure.
at it as something that we're in favor of doing.
sure.
Again, I'm on the contract negotiations committee,
Mm-hmm.
so I just want to be careful what it is that we're suggesting that we're in
Right,
favor of.
sure.
And just, yeah, understanding how we use this document. You're right,
Mhm.
I have no idea.
Right,
I see it more as a, like, approval to look into this stuff, but not necessarily actually go
sure.
through with it, that he will bring back the recommendations in the future.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, if we want,
No,
I don't need action on this tonight. If we want to table it and get some, or not vote on it, it's just, like I said, some of it's a little bit of, same as last year procedural, so.
But you just need approval to lock in those
If you,
numbers
if you,
for
like I
budget.
said, if you're comfortable with that number, I know Laura was questioning it earlier, so if we wanna revisit that, have me and Jeremy fine tooth comb that number, I'm okay with that as well. So,
I was just wondering if you had conservatively budgeted for them, just
Right.
because I know our enrollment has been going down this year, and I just wanna make sure we stay
right,
under that, whatever that low amount we really think we might hit, so.
right. Well, I will say one bit of information, I wasn't sure when I was gonna bring this up, but I did mock up our budget revenue-wise for fiscal year '24 with the limited tools. The state does have a revenue projection model out there, but with nothing settled, it's pretty much last year with a few tweaks, but with that new document with the 670 that's shown here, that would put our budget for fiscal year '24 would be about $500,000 larger than the budget we had in '23. So about $505,000 larger in the general fund. Overall, it was actually about a $760,000 increase. That was mainly due to the debt service levy though, because now we're finally seeing the full, with the new bond on there, so we went from $500,000 levy to $800 and something thousand levy in the debt service, so. But as far as that, digging into that 505,000, I also took our interest income projection for 23 was at 50,000. We're already almost surpassed that this year, especially with the CD purchase that I emailed about. So I put that up to 150,000 or $100,000 increase there. SPED has a $100,000 increase from last year, and then the one change, which I didn't take a lot of time to dig into how they calculated it, but they put our compensatory revenue, which is based off free and reduced numbers. When we budgeted 23, it was only at 80,000. Now it's almost 280,000 in the current go around. So I think with some of the changes they're making to that formula, it must have been in there. So that was a $200,000 increase right there. And then of course there are other little changes, but those were the big ones. So if we want to, like, even if we were to knock down, let's say 5 more students, I think we'd still come up with a budget that would be, you know, favorable, because our costs are of course going to increase as well as we go through this. So, yeah, I think we could maybe make that argument to go down, like I said, another 5. What grade wise would be, you know, something me and Jeremy could figure out. So, but as far as like just looking through the list here, I guess I could share this document, but I don't have it on the minutes currently. You know, none of the grades look like that out of line with where they were. As far as, you know, the 11th graders is the one that's kind of sticks out to me, because that's always our bubble grade. I mean, most grades are in the 40s and 50s. That one's at 70 right now. So, but they've been that way. I mean, that's been climbing
class.
as we went. So,
I mean, that was just my opinion. I don't know,
sure.
like, if everybody, I mean, if you feel that the 8 below is fine, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that we are conservative with our
Right.
estimates, so we,
Yeah. The one thing, you know, unless the legislature does wrap up in May like they're supposed to, and then we can finally get concrete numbers. But then, you know, we're also gonna need to know kind of where negotiations are gonna land, because they're asking, like, you know, can we afford this? You know, we're dealing with so many assumptions right now. The budget's just all over the place. So if we can get firm revenue, at least, you know, that would be a lot easier to go off of. And a lot of that, I mean, the student count's one thing, but there's all those other factors right now. So, but yeah, I feel like 660 would be conservative, but not overly conservative. That would maybe allow us to, you know, have some more flexibility when it comes to negotiation time.
So are you suggesting go from the 670
Well,
down to 660?
No,
now?
he's
we're-
including
that's
the
that
10.
ECSC.
Okay, yep, I just want to make sure I understand
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you're proposing.
I wish I could take that out of there and put it off to the side. I don't know what to do with that ECSE, but the way that the ADM report reads, you know, it's like the first
Yep.
number, so. But yes, so I would say where we're at, I'm sorry for going back and forth here, but I think we're setting at a good pace here. And of course, we can change this later. This is not set in stone, you know, if some information comes to light. So,
Well, and it'll change, the budget thing will change once we figure out, because we're doing this at 0% increase too from the
Right.
state. So
yeah,
we always adjust this once we find out what the
right,
final state numbers come in for that too. And then we can always adjust the student population
Right.
at
Sure.
that time too.
yeah,
I think in the past, we always, and this is going way back to 2012, 13, 14, we always usually tried to do like 15, but we were more unstable
right.
back then than we have been in the last 4, 5, 6 years too, so,
Mm-hmm.
You tried to do 15 under?
under. But back then, we were a little more, not as stable as we are right
Yeah.
now with our enrollment and stuff, so.
Right.
I would be fine with this 8 as we have it right now, because again, it's not set in stone, we can adjust it, because we'll be adjusting it once we figure out the states, what percentages they're gonna go with.
Mhm.
yep. All right. Any further questions then?
not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget assumption.
That's Tim Melky. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Berg. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Approve resolution accepting donations with many thanks. I will read through them. We have a donation from Janesville State Bank for $11,371.83 that's from the Bulldog card donation. The Bulldog backers donated $1,000 for track and field apparel. Bulldog backers donated $594.44 for expo boards. Bulldog backers donated $443 for musical production supplies. And St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation donated $4,545.19 to the Joe Finley Family Scholarship Fund. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
That's Kevin Bourne. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Burke. This resolution.
Burke,
Yes.
Bourne,
Yes.
Dashner,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Size.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. 11, upcoming meetings, May 1st study session, May 15th, regular meeting followed by Finance and Operations Committee, June 12th, a regular meeting followed by an Instruction and Curriculum Committee meeting. And I think if we need a special meeting,
For budget?
for the budget, we will put one in there, but if everybody approves it, we don't feel we need that, then we won't add a special meeting. So,
Right.
The end of June.
yep,
Yeah.
so,
The reason we're meeting June 12th rather than June 19th is because of Juneteenth.
yep. Okay, all right. And we are adjourned at 7:12 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Matt, did you ever get a chance to look at this? I talked to Jeremy about it.
Was it the
softball,
softball?
negative $13,000.
So I was just talking. He brought it up to me just today. He remembered you had asked. So I think what happened is the
14,000.
softball in the sound system. There was some wires crossed with Ryan, because he I think all the stuff, even the stuff that went in the gym there, he had put on there, put to the softball trip. And I had just, coded it that way, but I didn't really look at the effect till now. And I guess the auditors didn't catch it. But I think a lot of that Scheidel music invoices ultimately will have to get moved out of there. So I will work with Mr. Dasher now and make sure that we get what should be paid for.
So
Figured
what,
out.
which sound stuff, I guess?
Oh, there was because part of what the girls wanted was a sound system down at the softball field.
Oh, yeah, that part, but
But then I think some of the stuff that Scheidel was doing up here at the school too in the big gym, somehow the invoices and Ryan, it's all Ryan's handwriting, but it was like $20,000 total that got put onto the softball club from Scheidel.
okay.
So now that I looked at it more closely, I was like, oh, yeah, that probably shouldn't all be there. But
Yeah,
to
okay.
figure out what exactly should be,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
just because all of a sudden I'm looking at that and that's like going, whoa.